All right, so let's take this into Bitcoin.
Yes.
Bitcoin has had this inflation narrative for a long time, and I think we both had our own battles against the inflation narrative. I think it's very dangerous. I've talked about for a long time how once the world realizes we're actually in a deflationary environment, that Bitcoin's going to lose a bid because of all this inflation talk over the years. So, are all the models dead for Bitcoin, or is there something that we can look at as a narrative in this time for Bitcoin?
Here's the narrative, Ansel, and
Okay.
I'm going to thread the needle here. Stick with me. So I agree with you. I mean, the fact that we still have to debate the structural deflationary environment that we're in, even if consumer prices remain high, you've got a structural deflationary environment because of the debt levels and demographics. And
Yep.
let me just be very clear on this. The amount of debt we've racked up in itself, even QE, as Jeff Snyder points out, they're deflationary forces, right? They are not the powder keg that would cause hyperinflation in the developed world. They suck for people paying for gas and food, but they're deflationary impulses. Debt, demographics, poor demographics, and digitization. Those three things will continue to override the whole narrative that you see in these consumer prices. And what that basically means in a very simple way is that you should expect weak, anemic, post GFC type growth moving forward, or worse, right? Even, terrible growth by historical standards. So what is going to be the inevitable conclusion there, where you have debt, poor demographics, and digitization, which is causing a deflationary pressures? You should expect long end yields to fall, okay? Consistently fall, to the point where I think I agree with former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan, where he said that it's only a matter of time in the United States before we get negative rates. Now, where does Bitcoin come into this? At a certain point, it becomes politically unacceptable and difficult to get long end yields to fall, even with this deflationary dynamic. You can get, we had parts of the world that have negative rates and negative nominal rates. I think U.S. will get to negative nominal rates. And in that environment, bearer assets become extremely attractive. The ability to custody your solution in Bitcoin, in a currency that cannot be debased, that is so valuable in that dynamic, because once you get to the lower bound, you have to rely increasingly on fiscal authorities to spend money. That's why I think, and I've said this often, I think UBI is inevitable in the entire world. They're not going to let citizens starve. They're going to go further than the QE psychological manipulation. They're actually going to spend a lot of money. They discovered this during the pandemic in the United States with these stimmy checks, which were extremely politically popular. They will continue that in mass by spending more and more and more and giving it direct cash infusions to people to spend it. And this is the big thing. To light the fuse of an extreme inflationary environment, you have to give cash to people that are going to spend it instantly, like they did with the stimmy checks during the pandemic. So I think we get there. I don't think we're there now. I think that comes. And in that environment where they're giving direct cash transfers to most of the Western world, boy, that makes me more bullish for Bitcoin than anything else. I think that if the policymakers take those steps, you're going to see Bitcoin's price absolutely rip. Forget all these models that, tell you worthless. I always think it's kind of, as an aside, I think it's kind of silly, these arguments that say, oh, in 2035, Bitcoin's going to be 10 million, 20 million, 30. That doesn't tell you anything, right? Like, what's the purchasing power going to be of 10, 20, $30 million in 2035? It doesn't give you any valuable market information. What I always ask is, tell me how much oil I'm going to be able to purchase for Bitcoin in 2030. Tell me how much real estate I'm going to be able to purchase. That's the key thing. So forget the dollar equivalency for a second. Look at where Bitcoin plays in this market, where policymakers are forced to one conclusion, which is to spend a lot of money on the fiscal side.